Okay, welcome everybody. It is noon. We are going to go ahead and get started with our community of practice today. I'm so glad that we've got a room full of some people. We have smaller numbers today, but that is okay. We're so excited to share some important information with you all. My name's Mindy, and I'm part of the MultiNet team, and we are excited to have Brad Jones from Workforce Services with us today to share a little bit about vocational rehabilitation. I'm gonna pass it on over to Holly to introduce Brad for us, and then he'll take it over from there. So go ahead, Holly.
Hey, hi, my name is Holly Ennis-Poe, and I work at the Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice, or IDRPP, at Utah State University. Together with my colleagues, Dr. Eduardo Ortiz, sorry, fumbling over my words, and Mindy Docus, we would like to welcome all of you to another community of practice organized by the Multicultural Disability Network and Training, or MultiNet, we call it, a project that seeks better understanding of the challenges faced by people with disabilities. The intersectionality of disability and multiple social, economic, geographic, and cultural factors, among others, creates complex contexts that need expanded conversations and learning opportunities, such as this community practice event. As part of MultiNet efforts, we have developed other products. I invite you to look at the link that we're going to place here in the chat. And at this month's meeting, an introduction to vocational rehabilitation will be presented by Brad Jones, who is the district director for Southern Utah with the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation within the Department of Workforce Services. Brad holds a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from Utah State University and earned his certified rehabilitation counselor credential in 2024. He is deaf and uses a cochlear implant on one side and a hearing aid on the other. Brad grew up in Utah using oral communication and later learned American Sign Language, which has shaped both his personal life and professional perspective. Before starting the presentation, I'd just like to remind everybody of a few ground rules. Please briefly introduce yourself in the chat with your name, location, organization, and if you have had any experience with vocational rehabilitation. This webinar is a space for constructive discussion, not debate or argument, so let's keep the conversation focused and avoid side discussions, please. Keep an open mind and be open to learning something new. Avoid making assumptions. Be respectful of others. Listening is just as important, if not more so, as talking. Ask questions to gain an understanding and clarity. You can post the questions in the chat, and Brad's going to talk more about that in a minute. Final reminder, this community of practice meeting is also recorded, so please keep your mic muted during the presentation. Welcome, Brad. Please take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad and honored to have the opportunity to share my knowledge and answer any questions that we have. So to kind of get started, a little bit more about me. I've been working with Department of Workforce Services for almost 9 years, and about 6 years ago, I actually came over to Voc Rehab. So it's been a wonderful experience to get my master's degree and then just really getting into a field helping individuals with disabilities with employment. I wanted to kind of go quickly around if anybody already knows about Voc Rehab. Does anybody? And also another thing too, with my presentation today, I really would like to have more of a discussion for those who are willing and wanting to kind of participate as well. So that way, because I feel like there's so much information out there, and I want to make sure that I'm able to present on answering some of the questions that you have. So if nobody has any questions right now, if you do have a question, feel free to put that in the chat, or go ahead and raise your hand, and we can kind of get your answers. Eduardo, do you? Perfect. So this is kind of the introduction to Voc Rehab. So I know the last couple months we had Dr. Landon and Dr. Gerald. They kind of give their presentations about Voc Rehab and their expertise and their knowledge about the instructions that they provided in the last couple meetings that we've had is very insightful. I was able to join and listen to Dr. Gerald, and again, it's just a refreshing reminders of different things that kind of affect the world of our work, vocational rehabilitation, but it's also just that professional development side of it. And now I'm glad I'm able to take their knowledge and kind of continue that information to what it looked like in, I guess, the real world vocational rehabilitation. We go by a couple different acronyms. There's Voc Rehab and VR, not virtual reality, but Voc Rehab. So a lot of people get them mixed up, or just they know them by different acronyms. And so if I start spouting off different acronyms and I'm just not clarifying them, please go ahead and raise a hand and let me explain what acronym I'm referring to if I start. Because a lot of times I feel like when we work in a state agency, there's so many acronyms, even a government agency, and it just becomes second nature to spout off different acronyms. Like, for example, the CRPs, Community Rehabilitation Partners, they're basically agencies that we work with helping people with employment. And so I'll go a little bit more into detail of how we help with that. But again, if I start spouting off different acronyms and you're like, "Hell, can you explain that acronym a little bit more?" And I'd be happy to do that. So kind of start off, the Voc Rehab, let's go, who here knows about Voc Rehab? Kayla? So Kayla, would you feel comfortable sharing anything, what you know about Voc Rehab?
Well, I'm a counselor with the Wyoming Department of Voc Rehab, so I know quite a bit. I'm not quite to CRC status yet because I practice under my supervisor CRC. I have 8 counselors ahead of me before I get to go join the ranks of the Utah State University. Super excited about it. But yeah, we definitely get to help a lot of interesting individuals. I do the evaluation to do the disabilities, but I just get to know people as they are. So
That is awesome. It's a wonderful kind of way to get just working in Voc Rehab, just working with the client, getting to know who they are, some of the barriers that they have, and how to determine their eligibility. So congrats on getting in with Voc Rehab in Wyoming. That's awesome. Was there somebody else who also, I kind of missed the other one?
I saw a thumbs up from Molly. Molly, if you feel comfortable and want to chime in.
Yeah, sorry, Molly and I'm actually Riley, but we're using Molly's link. Both work with Meridian Supports in Utah, and we provide support to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we work with a Voc Rehab team and counselors to help support people to gain community employment.
Perfect. So again, we're all kind of collaborating and working with the same population. And so this is the mission statement for Voc Rehab. It's something that's always been really near and dear to my heart when it comes to helping people. And I think all of us can agree that this is a shared mission that we have in some way or form or another. This is the Vocational Rehabilitation Program assists individuals with disabilities to obtain employment and increase their independence. Now, I know there may be some individuals support out in the communities like therapists, case managers, or different things that they may help with more things outside of employment. And this is where I feel like this is where Voc Rehab really stands out, is that we really focus on the employment side of things and how it can help individuals with disabilities become more independent and gain that self-confidence. I know a lot of times when we have individuals with disabilities, that can affect the motivation or even the self-esteem. And so if we're finding ways that we can help give the client these tools to boost and improve their self-employment, self-esteem, and show that they are able to do things out, obtain employment, and be integrated in the communities. This is something that can empower them to make a huge difference. And this is how it really inspired me because one, as you know from the introduction, I do have hearing loss myself, and so I'll use the closed captioning, subtitles, and sometimes I'll use the interpreters. But for this meeting, I'm using the subtitles, and it's just really finding the tools that people can use and help spread that knowledge and awareness of the different tools that we have at a fingertip to help us with the employment goals. So the next slide is like, what counts as a disability? Do we have anybody who wants to share a little bit more of what disabilities they usually see? And again, Kayla and Molly, if you guys have other common disabilities that you see in a day-to-day work, I'd be more than happy to hear some of your experiences.
I see a lot of autism and we of course we have regular anxiety and depression that starts it out and then you kind of dig a little deeper. A lot of spectrum stuff is what I see.
Yeah, I think a lot of the knowledge and testing that we can do nowadays helps us to identify some of those who may have autism or be diagnosed with autism.
ADHD is pretty common too.
Yeah.
We've
Molly,
worked with several people. I've had people that were hearing impaired on the spectrum. We have mental disabilities. Like we deal with so many different types. It's fun to help find them a job that they can all succeed in their different ways.
absolutely. Especially like just being able to identify the different skills and abilities that they have. Even though someone may have a disability, I like that phrase that they are differently abled. They have ways that they've learned to adapt around their disability to be creative in different ways. And so
Well,
being
how
able to find
someone can have the same ability diagnosis and be completely different on that. It's finding that way around and finding different coping strategies that you might not have even thought of. And this other person's like, hey, this is how I do it. And I'm like, that is brilliant.
it is, and it's just that community of being able to learn and work together to kind of see things in a different perspective. And so I think this is again where with employment and just addressing their disability, being able to share this knowledge and different resources helps us to be able to think and view and address, focus on how one disability doesn't have to be a giant barrier to prevent them from living a life or obtaining employment. And so by working with that community, like Katie shared, just finding that the unique talent or even the different abilities that they have to really give them that hope. And so when we look at a disability, we'll look at for voc rehab, we're looking at any physical or mental condition that affect their ability to complete major life activities. And so we'll get a little bit more in detail with this later on. But again, we always for voc rehab, we're looking at through the lens of employment. And so sometimes we do look at the daily life of how did their disability impact their daily activities. This can also be very tied very much into employment. And so if they're having a hard time getting up in the morning and doing certain tasks and making breakfast, just going throughout their day, and they need additional support. What does that look like? And how can we tie that into employment? Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So examples of disabilities, that we have, Katie mentioned a few, Kayla, you also mentioned some, and also I believe Molly, and I'm trying to remember who's with Molly.
Hi, sorry, my name's Riley.
Riley, perfect, thank you. So Riley, you also mentioned that you had some people with disabilities.
Yeah, so we provide care for people typically in like a residential setting. So we work under the HCBS waiver, and the qualifier to participate in our services is that somebody has to have an IQ of less than 70, or we do also support people who are under like the brain injury waiver, things like that. So we do support quite a few individuals that have that fall on this list: people with autism, cerebral palsy, diabetes. Some of our individuals do have diabetes, but that's not the qualifier to live in our services. But yeah, so a lot of ours is significant intellectual disability.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really focusing on and work with a lot more, like just like for example, in Utah we have the DSPD, Division of Services for Person with Disability.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long word.
Yeah, most of our individuals receive services through DSPD.
Okay, perfect. So again, it's like you're kind of in that field and in that knowledge, and so when you refer clients to Voc Rehab, we're still having that partnership throughout that case, right?
Yeah, so we support people, like we have an internal employment team who may work on like job skill development, and there is funding through DSPD for job coaching and things like that. So it's kind of a companion service with working with VR. It depends on if the person like, qualifies or anyways, yeah. So we just work hand in hand with a lot of VR counselors and things like that for people.
Yeah. Thank you again for going more into detail with that, Molly. And again, I think we can all agree that addressing and working with individuals with disabilities, it's not going to be a simple, oh, this person is deaf and hard of hearing, but then this person over here just had anxiety and depression. I think it's fair to say a lot of times we may see an individual who have multiple significant disabilities. And so for someone who has DSPD or long-term support, this is something that's going to be really, they need more of that support. And how can we support them? And that might be a collaboration of DSPD, community partners, job coaches, Voc Rehab, and then other case managers that we can really just give the support around the client, so that way they can make that informed choice of what they want to do and how we can help them. So I know we've mentioned off a lot of different disabilities. Are there any, just kind of from the group here, is there any of these disabilities that stand out to you or kind of surprised you? Okay, I'm not here, not seeing any hands. So
I'll jump in, Brad.
yeah, thank you.
I was surprised, but then I thought about it and it makes sense. But diabetes to me is one that seems interesting that like additional services might be needed to help, or like supports to help someone with diabetes. But then I was thinking about we have a digital storytelling episode where someone shared about their experience getting diagnosed with diabetes and then also living with diabetes. And it was a lot more in depth than I would have thought to have. I mean, I obviously don't have diabetes and I don't really know what that experience is like. But after hearing that person's story, it makes sense that depending on what type of employment you have, it could be really difficult to hold down a job when you are managing all kinds of different like physical health like tasks that you have to do with diabetes. So I think that's one that probably a lot of people would have the same thought of like, well, why do you need help when you have diabetes? But yeah, I think that was an interesting one for me.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's also the spectrum of the diabetes as well. So it's for someone who may have a more mild form of diabetes, it may not affect them as much. But for somebody else who may have just had maybe episodes or different health issues that have impacted and made diabetes worse, that can impact their ability to work and function as a normal everyday person.
Yeah, and maybe like type 1 versus type 2 also can make a really big difference too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a hand up. You mind sharing which one of these examples stood out to you?
Yes, hello, this is Mustafa. I don't see it here, but autoimmune disorder. For example, I have ulcerative colitis that impacts my digestive system, and you know, for example, it's not always active, but when it's active, it just knocks me down, and I there are many days that I can't do anything. And I like how the new version of the ADA covers autoimmune disorder, basically any condition that alters how our organs function is protected and considered under the ADA.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Mustafa. Uh, we we do having that information and really allowing us to understand the disabilities and how it affects our day-to-day life, even if it's something such as the autoimmune disorder. It just maybe on a good day you're able to do things that normal people can do, but on the days that you can't, it really does impact your way of life. Holly?
Thank you, Brad. Just to kind of piggyback on what Mustafa was talking about, just even the treatment, some treatments for ulcerative colitis or other, disorders, that takes a few days to recover from after a treatment. So that's even difficult too. And then one of the things that I was going to talk about is that the thing that really surprises me in the role that I have now as a therapist is how many people don't realize that mental health conditions also apply. And
Yeah,
and that's one that always surprises me, that people aren't aware that that does cover mental health.
absolutely. And sometimes, like we just just the more awareness that we can give and share with our communities and with just the people around us to really bring this awareness, just helps us to help find ways to empower other people and really understand it. It's not going to be the same for every single person. You can have two people with the same diagnosis, but it can affect them very, very differently. And that's one thing I really like about with the Voc Rehab program, is we look at not only the diagnosis that they've been given by a medical professional, but also how it affects that individual and their day-to-day life. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So there's four criteria that we look at when it comes to determining someone eligible for Voc Rehab. And so these are the four things. So does the significant physical or mental impairment exist? Meaning, do we have a medical diagnosis that had been identified and by a licensed physician or even someone who has a license to diagnose? Do they have a disability? And then the other one, does this impairment result in substantial barrier to employment? And that a lot of times we have these terminologies that people don't quite understand. So with this impairment, when it creates a barrier to employment, do they struggle to do the basic necessities on the job day to day? And if so, what does that look like? For someone who has hearing loss, I like to use someone who has hearing loss more frequently because I know what it's like, and I do have hearing loss. So without my cochlear implant, without my hearing aid, I wouldn't be able to hear or function on the job. So I wouldn't be able to communicate effectively. I could verbalize, but I wouldn't be able to receive that information correctly. And so for me, I guess you could say by that, I do have a disability. I have been diagnosed with it. It could be a substantial barrier to employment had I not have some accommodations and resources to help me be able to hear. And then the third one is, does the individual require VR services? This one, again, it's for open, there is some interpretation on whether or not someone would benefit from services. For example, if someone is already working and they're working at like a career, like for me, voc rehab. Actually, I think I skipped one. Does the individual require VR services? So I kind of skipped that next one. Will the individual benefit from terms of employment for the outcome? So again, these are 4 criteria. So will someone benefit from these 4 services? I'm getting tongue-tied. So do they have a disability? Is it a substantial barrier to employment? And does the individual require VR services? And then last, will the individual benefit from terms of employment outcome? And so to be eligible for voc rehab, the individual must meet all 4 of these. So just because they have a disability does not, by default, make them eligible for voc rehab. Like, for example, let's say a client has a disability, they've been told that they need help with getting a job, so they apply for voc rehab, but the client themselves don't want to work. They have that informed choice of not wanting to work. And so in our services, we don't force people to work. It's very individualized, and we support the client in what they want to do. And so for this one, if the client chooses that they don't want to work, based on our criteria, they would not be eligible because our services are to lead to employment. Is there any questions about this VR eligibility criteria? I think, again, there's so much more to this, but it is like, it's one thing that makes voc rehab counselors different than just mental health therapists, in my opinion, where we're trying to focus on individuals who want to obtain employment. And so we use the resources, we use those diagnoses to then help individuals determine if they're eligible for voc rehab.
Brad, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
I'm just curious if from my personal experience, I know of someone who has a pretty significant disability, and he is employed and has been employed since before he had the disability. But I've often wondered if there are more appropriate jobs for him based on his ability now after having a disability, because it's not one that he always lived with. I'm curious if that is something that VR counselors also help with, and how much because I know for this person I'm talking about, he loves his job and there's lots of things that he really enjoys about it, but it's also very difficult, very demanding, especially now after he has the disability that he has. And I'm curious if that's something that voc rehab would help, like talk with a person about, like potential changes so that they're using their strengths more than not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, that is something we can definitely look into. We do, once we determine, this is separate from the financial contribution that we do have to look at. If we're looking at their disability, but this might be an example with, is the individual underemployed? And then we would be able to look at that. But again, if there's a career shift where the client feels like they love what they do, but the job itself is just becoming increasingly more difficult, we can look at that and say, is there a way that we can pivot by using the current knowledge and skills and help them redirect their strength? So yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Vivian?
Hi, yes. My name is Vivian. I work here in Salt Lake too. I work at Journey Center for Behavioral Health, and this is kind of a question for like the past few slides. but our clientele is mainly refugees. No English, no education, and I was just wondering like how you would approach that as defining disability or impairment to getting employment. And yeah, I was just wondering how Voc Rehab would approach that.
Yeah, that's a great question. If the individual is a refugee and may have more of a language barrier, that's something that we would refer to the Office of Refugee Services. And so that we would kind of partner up with them and see how, I mean, anybody is more than welcome to apply for services. When we do have services, resources to help with language barriers. So if someone does speak a different language, we do have resources to help with that. For voc rehab purposes, we do look at the disability. And for us, it's more of a physical or mental disability.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Mustafa?
Yes, I think I forgot my question, but I can probably give some feedback. So my research focuses on refugees with disabilities, and my current work focuses on access to disability programs. And from my research and also from my experience as well, so I'm a product of Voc Rehab. Because of Voc Rehab, I was able to finish my bachelor degree. However, there is major barrier for refugees to access Voc Rehab. Across the board, if a refugee doesn't speak English, oftentimes Voc Rehab is not prepared. The workers not prepared. The policies are not geared to welcome this population. In multiple states, participants in my study said that oftentimes rehab cannot pay for language interpretation because unless that's actual client. For example, during assessment, during the initial like registration phases, there is no they can't provide interpretation because that client is not actually registered. So, and the other thing, from my experience, going through the program, for example, when I applied, I was about 2 years in the United States, and they asked me to complete that. It's like an exam or assessment that took me about 6, 7 hours to complete. And all the questions were kind of like designed for someone who was born here, someone attended high school. So the history knowledge and like there's a lot of information that refugees never get exposed to. However, if they fail, that means this client might not be eligible for Voc Rehab because they will not be able to, for example, attend college. And that was the case in my situation where I just failed the test and I had to. So this could be so just a little bit more info about what I went through. So when I finished the test, I knew I failed it, but I really wanted that scholarship. So I went and I asked my friend who was at college at that time, and I asked him, like, can you give me a word that like every college students get exposed to? And he was like, yeah, mitochondria that we all learn in biology 101. And I want to, like, I learned how to spell it. I know the meaning. After I think it was a week or 10 days, I get the result. And the social worker was like, okay, come in, Mustafa. I'm like, listen, before I sit, I know you're going to tell me, oh, you are sorry, you failed the test. We can't do anything for you. I was like, I'm here to give you a very brief test to help you understand what I went through. So I asked her to spell out for me mitochondria. She couldn't spell it. She couldn't tell me the meaning. I was like, hey, listen, I'm not here to, embarrass you, but I'm here to help you understand what I went through. I was like, you were exposed to this word when you went to college. You're a native English speaker. And what about me? Like all the questions that you asked me in this test, I was not exposed to. So this is not a test that is really testing my ability, whether I can attend college or not. And she was like literally shocked. She's like, you have a very valid point. Actually, you failed the test. And I was going to tell you, we are sorry, we can't help you. She was like, let me just talk with my boss. And they actually had to, ignore their policy and give me the scholarship with a condition that I pass every semester successfully, which I did. I finished my bachelor with 3.8 GPA. Uh, just like, it's so complex. And so before me and after me, so many refugees with disabilities were, again, still weren't getting qualified because of these structural barriers. And actually, that social worker and the manager went and demanded from the state to change the policy to help refugees with disabilities get qualified. So it took so long, but I just hope there's some lessons here.
No, thank you so much for sharing your experience and just the way that what you had to go through. And yeah, well, we are, again, just like that resiliency that you showed, you endured, really was able to, you were able to kind of fight, advocate for yourself and becoming eligible for voc rehab. And again, the challenges that you had to go through, you're not alone on that. I can see that, and the cultural policies that we have in place, we're always trying. I feel like we're always trying to identify these different challenges, and when it comes to those kind of barriers that we would put in place, because whether it be the policy, the culture, how can we address that so that we can provide that support? So I agree with that, and I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us and how we can make those changes. And I think a lot of times having those experiences allows us to then share that knowledge with the others in the state that we work with and encourage us to make those improvements in our policy. Holly?
Yeah, thank you, Mustafa. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it. I was actually going to jump back to Vivian. I was knows that she works at the Behavioral Health Center.
Yes.
And they're utilizing your services with behavioral health.
Okay.
I'm
That's
sorry,
true.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we have been using Access One diagnoses to help our refugee clients because we provide multiple different services at Journey, and my team is the employment team, but we're going to be reaching out to vocational rehab to help our clients as much as we can. But yeah, I was just wondering if there was a direct contact they could have with you, but thank you.
And just even my mind's going a couple different directions, sorry, but I was going to say that refugees often, I mean, they have so much trauma from where they're coming from and the road to where they're at now. And so just even that PTSD that a lot of them struggle with.
Yes.
And Brad can definitely, talk more about this, but
Okay.
that would be a pathway, possible
Yes.
pathway to vocational rehabilitation. And then my other thought for you, Vivian, is I don't know if you've ever heard of, it's called JAN. It's the Job Accommodation Network.
Jan? No, I haven't.
JAN, it's a website, and it has a lot of really useful information for accommodations for jobs for what you're doing in your field. So
Oh,
aside
wow.
from Voc Rehab.
Okay, yeah, I will love to look into more of that. Thank you so much for sharing that resource.
Thank you. It looks like Mindy put it on the chat, so thank you, Mindy.
Okay.
So thank you for that, jumping in there, Holly. And yeah, thank you, Vivian, for, again, it's just really that part of that collaboration and working together really helped both community partners and even the clients that are refugees, and to just helping spread that awareness and knowledge of the resources that we have and how we can support each other. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide, Eduardo. Thank you. So kind of back to the VI eligibility criteria. If an individual receives SSI or SSDI, we can get that verified through Social Security or have a benefits letter. And this can really just help speed up the process where we take in insight, basically what the clients share their disability and how it impacts their ability to work. Now, we understand that to apply for and qualify for SSI or SSDI, there is a different screening process that they have to go through. And so for us, we look at them and say, based on the information that they share with us, we can make them presumed eligible. So that does have to get verified through our system in our process, but they'll be presumed eligible. I'm just reading your comment, Mustafa. Looks like you got the sharing an article. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about more of that information. And again, just that information is just really impactful. Mustafa, you had your unmuted.
Yes. So one of the findings that service providers from Voc Rehab and refugee programs discuss is this, service disconnection, like how that these programs do not communicate. So the navigation often falls on on refugees with disabilities who are already not aware of what Voc Rehab is about, not aware of how to access services, and not aware of language access. So, and we put all the burden on the very population facing the challenges. However, there are many opportunities to proactively building collaborations. And so I'll be writing an article on this just to help providers how to start, how to build, because collaboration is multiple stages, multiple steps that that needs to happen in order to actually refer a client. Because oftentimes what I found is that referral was just about, okay, here is a card about Voc Rehab that you can seek services from. Well, that doesn't work for refugees who don't have the language or, that don't even know what Voc Rehab is about. So hopefully in the article, I'll clarify these issues and share it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And again, it's like we're also focused on areas that are more rural areas in this group. And sometimes the rural areas may struggle also to have that kind of support. And so just being aware of that collaboration is really comes into play of working together, not only with the client and the local Voc Rehab counselor, local Voc Rehab office, but also being able to make sure that we're sharing that knowledge and tapping into the right resources and support that we have available, rather than just doing a simple, here, have a card, contact us, but have more of a warm handoff approach. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So once the client is found eligible, we then want to move forward toward putting them into a plan. Now, I know we're getting kind of short on time, so I'm going to kind of speed up the process a little bit. But again, if you have any questions, everyone can feel free to contact me and follow up. So kind of going into the plan development, anything that we do has to be, anything we pay for or support has to be in what we call the individual plan for employment. And this is the big thing that it's basically a written contract that agreed upon between a counselor and the client. And so this is where we really emphasize and stress having the client make those informed choices, but also have documentation to say this is what Voc Rehab agrees to pay for, or this is how Voc Rehab agrees to support the client, and this is how the client is going to continue to move forward, making progress towards employment. And these plans are very individualized. And so, again, one person, they may need help with a bus pass for a short time so that they can get to school or get to work, whatever it may be. And somebody else they might not live in a route where a bus pass is available, which again, that rural side of it, and they might need help with their vehicle, just helping with fixing up, improving, like for example, sometimes we've helped people with getting new tires on a car because that's what that reliable transportation is needed to help that individual with employment. That is something that we have helped them with before, and so it depends on the need. But again, it has to be part of helping that individual with their employment plan. So this, I would say the individual plan for employment, there's so much that goes into it, but I also like to try and keep it simple. And so I know it's a lot of information. Any questions about making a plan? Okay. If you do, feel free to reach out, send me an email, and I'd be more than happy to respond. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, the different types of services that we have available. So this is one thing that we do in-house and that I'd like to say we train ourselves to do very well is the vocational guidance and counseling, or counseling and guidance. And so this is where, let's say we get a client who comes in and says, I have different skills, but I have no idea what I want to do. We have different assessments that we can have them do. We have different discussions or questions we can ask and really find what is their strength, what is some interest, what are some hobbies that they have that really can help us identify what's something that we could help them determine what they would like to do. Now, one thing I do want to mention about the plan, just because we put it in plan doesn't mean we can't change it. It's a living document. We can revise it, we can make changes, amend it, whatever is needed to support that job goal, we can make those changes. And sometimes some people might say, you know, I think I have autism, but I've never been diagnosed. This is something that we can help with. Assistive technology. I've had clients say, hey, I need hearing aids. We can help with that. Now, I will say we do look at the client and the family, the household income. And so sometimes we may not be able to provide services based on their income, but again, it varies on the individual. Any questions about the different services? I mean, again, I'm kind of brushing through a little quick just because of time, but are there any questions about the time of the services? Holly?
Can I just really quick, so for services, if their financial contribution is more than what's accepted, you can still provide counseling and guidance for them, just not the out of office services.
Absolutely, yeah. Another thing that we do is we try to use comparable benefits. So like, for example, if the client has Medicaid, we're going to want to try to find a medical provider or therapist who accepts Medicaid. So that way, we're trying to help clients become independent. And so by utilizing comparable benefits, we're basically teaching the client how to use the resources they already have available to them. So again, that independent piece. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Now, from the time that the clients apply for services, our discussions revolve around employment. And so a client, we understand that some clients, they might need a lot more help in, we call it restoration, and in addressing their individual disability. And so sometimes their disability might be more long-term, sometimes it might be more short-term. And so whatever their needs are, our goal is to always help them make progress towards obtaining employment. Now, once the client's employed, then we don't just close them right off the bat. We want to make sure that they're stable in that job. And then once they're stable, then we want to move them. Then we monitor their employment and still follow up within 90 days just to kind of make sure that their job is stable, things are going well, and then we close the case. And we do have a process here in Voc Rehab about closing it. We don't just close the case just because we feel like it. There's a process. And we want to make sure that the clients are successful and have received the support that they need. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Now, the big question, how do you apply for services? Right now, we have a website with jobs.utah.gov at USOR/VR. Now, this is, if you go to the jobs.utah.gov website, it's DWF website. And so there's all the community resources available in the state of Utah. And if you there's a series of steps you can take to get there. But if you go on this link directly, I believe we're going to share this with all of you guys. But if you type in this link or go to this link, you can basically go directly to the orientation that you can watch virtually from your own computer, and then you can also print off an application. Now, I would say that we do have the option of having an in-person orientation at the selected offices, and you're more than welcome to call or refer someone to schedule for those orientation, and then we can also we can give an application to the individual who want to apply. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So after you've contacted a VR office, you've done an orientation, whether in person or virtually, you can then schedule that appointment to meet with a counselor and work on the process of applying for Voc Rehab services. Now, one thing I love about our services, if a client has a disability but doesn't have the documentation, we can help pay for it. If they need a new assessment or if we need to gather records, we can get those and we can help pay for them. So if the client, they don't have a way to get those, we can help with that. And once the client's eligible, then we work on making that, creating the individualized plan for employment. Again, I know that a lot of information in just a short amount of time. Again, if you have any questions, you can, I'll be sharing my email with you and you guys can reach out for any questions you have. Any last minute questions? And again, there's a link for more information. So thank you again for letting me present to you guys today, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Brad.
Brad, if we have an extra minute, I just would like to follow with some of the great presentation information that you just shared with us. Do you have any recommendation for people who lives in rural areas where they might have some specific challenges because their communities are unique? There are different barriers like distance or access to services or technology or so many other things. Do you have any recommendations, any tips for those rural settings?
Yeah, it, that's a great question, especially since we're focusing on the rural areas. So if the client doesn't have like access to transportation, there are sometimes when we can do a meeting at like a local library, where the counselor can go out and meet at a public location to meet with the client to do an application and kind of work with them a little bit more. But again, we try to address every case individually and find out the best way that we can support them. But if there's that need, we'll find what we can do to provide that support.
Thank
And
you.
again, I don't know everything, but I like to share what I do know. And then if I don't know the answers, I will go to someone and say, hey, help me brainstorm. How can we help this individual?
Yeah, I really like that about VR, that you really look at it case by case and help. So if somebody is in that situation, would you recommend they call maybe the front desk and kind of start the conversation that way, or?
I mean, yeah, like if someone in a rural area, depending on where they're at, what office would be closest to them, I would say contact the office, kind of give them a little like a situation. If they need to, they can talk to a supervisor or just a counselor, and we can kind of staff it individually and figure out what they needed for us to help them and how we can help. And sometimes if someone is tech savvy but they live in a rural area, we can do a virtual appointment. That's an option.
Awesome, thank you. Really appreciated today's information, Brad. Thank you for sharing.
Glad to help.
Yes, I want to say the same thing. Thank you, Brad. I think that your organization provides so much for the community who has disabilities, and um, you are doing a lot. So we appreciate your organization as well as your time to sharing with us your knowledge and how we can collaborate and work together. Thank you again.
Perfect. And again, this information is just scratching the top of, scratching the surface of it. We didn't even get to have any fun, deep discussion. So again, every case is individual, and we like to approach it that way.
Well, that is also an invitation for having you again at some point to go with more in-depth conversations, right?
Yeah.
I was just thinking too, that would be a fun question for next time, is how many people have used VR services themselves?
Right.
So yeah, so that would be interesting if they wanted to disclose. I did. It was fantastic. So
Perfect. Well, thanks again for having me. Let me know if anybody has any other questions.
Thank you, Brad. I learned so much with you today. I really did not realize how much, like, it feels like extra services that VR provides to support people. And I love how individualized those plans are. And even in thinking about those rural communities, thinking about transportation and what they need to even get a job in the first place, and being able to help with all of that is huge. That's like a game changer for so many people out there. So thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for sharing with us. And I hope that this is really useful for a lot of people as this is also posted to our website. And in the future, this is, I hope, will reach a lot more eyeballs than just what was here with us today. But we had a really great group with really great discussion, and I'm grateful to have been here today.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have hopped off already, but just quickly before we end, I wanted to just say that we have lots of great things coming. We don't have a lot that's like confirmed that we can say right now, but we have a lot more similar experiences for learners who want to come back and learn with us. So be on the lookout. I'll be sending out our newsletter and emails with more exciting things on the way. So thanks so much for being here, and thank you, Brad, for a wonderful presentation and for sharing so much with us today.
Thank you. Have a good one.